Hey, true believers, Chris Mack coming at you with Detective Comics 576. This is Batman Year 2, Part 2. And this is the first book where McFarlane took over the pencil work for this series. And you could really see his early influence. Now, before we dive into the review, there's one thing that I do want to point out. From our last review, one of our subscribers named Supertron really pointed out something that I forgot to mention, and I appreciate you, buddy, for bringing this to my attention. But Year 2, where this is 575 through 578, this is when the effects of Crisis on Infinite Earths really starts to take effect. So this is really where you could say that the post-Crisis Batman was in full swing. We went over Detective Comics 565, and that was kind of the title on there I put was a pre-crisis Batman and a post-crisis Earth or something like that. I'll put a card up here for you guys to click it at your review. But the way that Supertron kind of was talking about it, he said that Len Wein was still the editor, and he basically wanted to wrap things up from the post-crisis era. So after that, that's when this kind of took a dark turn. This is where Jason Todd became a orphan on the streets instead of being, I think he was blonde in pre-crisis, and he had worked in Haley's Circus as well. So I'm kind of glad that they nixed that idea, because it was way too close to Nightwing. So kind of making him more like a scandalous kid off the street. Batman takes in and kind of becomes a renegade. That's kind of really where you get the bare bone basics of Jason, etc., so forth. So appreciate you for pointing that out in our last review, man. Very helpful. With that said, let's dive into Year 2. So as we recall, the print date on this one was July 1987, I believe. And to just kind of bring you up to speed, the Reaper used to be this murderous, avenging spirit in Gotham, and would go and murder people, and then just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. And that's kind of when Batman kind of came in and took up shop. But the Reaper's back now, and he sees that his town still has kind of fallen into destitute, I think is the right word. If not, feel free to make fun of me down in the comments. And he kind of sees how Batman's really not keeping up the job, because he won't go as far as the Reaper would. Now, who's working on this book? This is Mike W. Barr, writer, Todd McFarlane, penciler, Alfredo Alcala doing the inks, Augustin Mas doing lettering, Adriani Roy doing colors, Denny O'Neil was the editor. Batman was created by Bill Finger with Bob Kane. And this is called Chapter 2, Deal with the Devil. And I just, this panel to me kind of didn't make sense, because, you see Gordon, you see one of the GCPD SWAT members, and you just see this hellscape in the background. Now, it's a great piece of work, and you can really start to see the early influence of what the type of art style McFarlane would have. So you can kind of see some Spawn influence in the demons. Just a really nice little way to kind of open up the book, in my opinion. Now we open up, GCPD is trying to protect another mob boss from the Reaper. They're trying to do an early transport so that they can beat the media circus and keep him safe. And I like how all of a sudden these things start opening fire. And everyone's thinking, oh, there's the gunman, shoot him, shoot him. And I like how, again, show don't tell, you can see that it's basically a mechanic robot shooting at them. And so while the police are distracted with that, we see the Reaper finds his target. And I like how, again, the Reaper says, in your last moments of life, you at last know wisdom, William Golonka. For you've learned to fear the Reaper. And he just goes through the mob boss that he's targeting, the GCPD, just like so much tissue. And again, even though McFarlane didn't write this, you can really see the influence of like the ultra violence. And I think too, they were just really trying to show how DC was now a complete 180 of the Silver Age, where it was just goofy and campy. We're now having more, what's the word I'm looking for, more quality artwork instead of how Batman used to always look very bubbly when he was muscular. I mean, the Silver Age had its charm, and of course that's where they based the 66 show off of, which I wish they hadn't, but it is what it is. That was the 60s. And I'm glad here in the latter half of the 80s they showed that we're going to try to write more insightful stories. Because even here, as you see at the beginning where it says, "Who watches the Watchmen?" This was DC's way of promoting Alan Moore as the Watchman to kind of show, the deconstructed superhero. It is just a really neat idea. Now, after the slaughter that we're introduced to here, the stakes have been risen. We all of a sudden see a targeting range. And just pew, pew, or pew, pew, if you want to get silly about it. And the pages will work with me. Just right off the panel, you see blam, and just, pinpoint accuracy, choom, choom, choom. And then you see Bruce with a gun. And I like how Alfred says, "Excellent shooting, Mr. Bruce. I wasn't aware you've been keeping up on your marksmanship." I haven't. And I just love how his face is shadowed in darkness to just show that this isn't him, because Bruce, after the death of his parents, said he would not take up firearms, which is not true. If you want to go all the way back to the Golden Age, he used to wield guns, but later down the road, it was a nice little way to kind of show how Batman wants to take out crime but not kill people, because he doesn't want to fall into the same category as murderers, which again, when they created the Reaper, was a perfect, how can I say, it was a great juxtaposition here, because we get the Reaper who will go to any length, and then Bruce actually giving in. The last panel of 575, you see Bruce pull out the gun that killed his parents, and that's what he's going to use to take out the Reaper, because he almost died at the hands of him last issue. And then we see him become Bruce. Again, kind of, you see the duality nature again, where he acts kind of nice and bubbly to Leslie. Leslie's not tolerated because she knows that he uses Bruce Wayne as a mask. And she's like, "How can I be calm when I know you're down there with that gun?" "The Batcave is soundproof, Leslie. You know what I mean. How could you do it, Bruce? Do you ever stop to think what your father would say if he knew?" And I like how the mask drops every day. And then as quick as it drops, it's back up. Because he tells Leslie, "I'll go meet Rachel Caspian instead of you," because Leslie and Rachel are friends. Leslie says that she's trying to find apartments, which she's kind of, as you see, distancing Bruce from the offer of him building that tower, and I think it's her father's name or something like that. And he said that the penthouse will be hers. And she's like, "I can't meet my people who live in Crime Alley there." And so you can kind of see how she's sort of distancing herself from Bruce, but still loves him. So it's just really interesting to see how he flip-flops so quick between the Bat and the Playboy. Just speaking of which, you see him say, "Alfred, make sure my equipment's in working order. I'm going out tonight." So you see him prepping his uniform. And then spoilers, last issue. If you don't want to be spoiled, please make sure to go read these before you watch this review, either if you can find the single issues or a collected trade. With that said, we find out last issue that the Reaper is Judson Caspian, Rachel's father. So I love how they just do these matching panels of Bruce getting ready, the Reaper getting ready. And then also to another degree is we see Judson talking to his daughter, and you see that she's getting ready to become a nun. And I just love these three panels of showing the different nature of all three of these characters in this story. It just really adds another layer to the reading. And this is what I mean when I say a lot of modern comic book writers, they don't know how to use subtext or just to let the art speak for itself. Like, there's some Superman books that I've read where there's this beautiful full page of Superman. And you don't really get to enjoy it because it's a full page like this, and just the word balloons are the entire length of the page, like you're reading a novel. Comics, unlike novels, are a visual medium. You don't need to do that. Just let the story unfold. And here we kind of see Judson reminiscing about his wife and how he's proud of Rachel becoming a nun. And he goes, "Your mother would have approved." Of course, she never knew. And she's like, "Father, don't do this. I thought I'd forgotten, darling, but I can't." And another thing here I want to point out, and this was in, what was the documentary? Chris Claremont's X-Men, where he basically said that when you write these characters, because he had a deep working, because he worked on X-Men for what was almost 10 years plus, and he's talking about how in order to make characters work, you focus on their lives, the action, etc., so forth, is just like the icing on top. So here, instead of just having this nameless hero, or "oh my god, so random, we're gonna go laugh and post on MySpace," we see that this is a deeply troubled man. And just look at the way the artwork shows how we reminisce back into the past. And we see him, his wife, and his daughter when she was little. And to a degree, just like I was talking about the matching the Reaper and Batman. And again, before we even get into that, look at the influence. You can see the early influence of McFarlane here, how he would use a lot of these styles of art for his tellings in Spawn, Spider-Man, etc., so forth. And just, man, even back in the 80s, dude had it, and his artwork still kicks ass to this day. But anyway, back to the story. He was, the Reaper was basically born out of the same type of violence that Bruce was. And it's hard to read. It's tragic, it's heartbreaking, and it hurts. And just look at the way that they use the shadows to show. They said that the wife leaves behind a loving daughter. And look at the way they do Judson here with the deep shadows. A distraught husband cut down in the prime of his life. And here I like that they show how Rachel finds comfort in the arms of one of the sisters of the nun, the nunnery, so that she can, when you come here to the modern time, you can see why she wants to dedicate her life to the Lord. To me, that's a great way of tying things together. Her going to what comforted her in her most darkest hour, why her father, Judson, decided a life of violence. As you can just see that he hasn't forgotten what happened to his family and what birthed the Reaper. And after that emotional roller coaster, we go back to Bruce finding Rachel, saying that he's come to have lunch with her in Leslie's stead, and she thinks that Bruce is playing her. And you don't really know his intention with her yet, because you don't know if he has a crush on her or if he's just trying to fill her out in terms of what type of person she is, since Leslie approves of her. And that's always how Batman has always used Bruce Wayne during the daytime, is to get information and to just kind of pry into people. And you can see how it's such a mask, because he finds out everything about her and she goes, "Well, what about you?" He goes, "There's not much. I just have too much free time. My entire life is an attempt to escape boredom." And just look at how bubbly they show Bruce compared to how Batman always looks, draped in shadows and darkness. It's a very nice way to show the two different sides of the same person. As we can see, we go into the night and see how they just kind of change his whole posture, the way he looks at people, because this is the real. If you go back and you do some research on what's called the Johari window, it shows the different sides of ourselves that we show people. And here, this is the most I guess you could say, pure form of Bruce Wayne when he is personified as Batman. Now, again, as we remember, the Reaper almost killed him last issue, and he vows to take this man down by using the gun that killed his parents. And he comes to James saying, I'm working alone on this case. I can't risk another leak. And he goes, Commissioner, very soon you're going to curse my name, order my capture, wish me dead. Against that time I can only say, I swear to you, by the cause that I love, that I am your friend. And remember, last issue, Gordon was talking about how he was trying to quit smoking regular cigarettes, and Batman gives him a pipe, and that's kind of how it shows how Gordon started to smoke a pipe. I just want to point that out because there's supposed to be a mobster that's coming in to Gotham for this summit, you could say. And of course, here comes the Reaper, Batman in disguise, and they get into another fight. Gordon goes to pull the gun on him, and he goes, I knew I could count on you, Batman. We've got him now. And you see bang, bang, and the gun pops out of Gordon's hand. And here's a side of Batman, modern Batman, that we don't see. Get out of here, Gordon, before this gets serious. And the Reaper says, I see you've learned from me, Batman. And so Bruce takes off with the mobster. Essentially, we know Batman's trying to save lives, no matter how rotten and forfeited a life may be. And I like how the SWAT member here says, I thought Batman was on our side. And just look at how Gordon changes, just draped in heavy shadow. So did I, McGinley. Looks like we're both wrong. And see how he snaps the pipe? That's good storytelling without 6,000 lines of dialogue. Just a few panels, a few word balloons. And this right here, show, don't tell. So we, the reader, know what's going on, and it breaks our heart to see this. But still, again, we're going into their lives, and we're seeing the hurt that James Gordon, thinking that he could trust Batman, going on national TV, saying that Batman works alongside the department, and now he feels betrayed. So if you remember, the title of this book is called Deal with the Devil. So Batman comes and talks to all of the mobsters of Gotham. And they actually kind of agree with Batman saying the enemy of my enemy is my friend. He says, it sounds dicey, but it might work. But we got our own man. You'll have to work with him. Hey, Joey. And it says the Batman turns. And in an instant, his world grows cold. What happens here? It's very poignant. Really kind of brings everything that Batman is to a point, and just excellent storytelling, great visual storytelling as well. So 576 really starts to up the ante from the last issue, and I really do feel like Batman Year 2 is one of those definitive books that is very much people sleep on and is not very well acknowledged. I think the reason being is because Batman Mask of the Phantasm has really become one of the definitive Batman stories, but people forget that everything that Bruce Timm and Paul Dini did came from all these classic stories. And I wish more people would go and check these out on their own and kind of get their own interpretations and ideas of what these stories are conveying and just the gorgeous artwork. So guys, if you've enjoyed this book, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and pick up a copy. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little bat bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, I hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.